Joining me right now is the former Speaker of the House, Georgia Congressman and Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich, back with us. Mr. Speaker, always a pleasure. Great to see you, Newt. Your reaction?
Well, look, I think that Majority Leader Thune did an amazing job to get the Senate to act that quickly. He got down to the wire and needed the Vice President to break the tie, but they got the bill through. That was an enormous achievement, and Majority Leader Thune deserves an awful lot of credit for inch by inch listening to his members, modifying the bill. And remember, for everybody who talks about no kings and about President Trump being too great a leader in terms of breaking out of the rules, this is the constitutional process. The 100 members of the Senate representing the states have to pass a bill. The 435 members of the House representing individual districts has to pass a bill. The President can't sign anything if they don't get this bill through. So the system's working. It's painful. It's hard. It's exactly what the Founding Fathers wanted. Now, Speaker Johnson has, I think, a very simple message that he's got to deliver to those Republicans who are thinking about voting no. A no vote is a vote for the largest tax increase in American history. I would challenge any House Republican. Explain to me, if the Senate bill got through by a tie vote with the Vice President breaking the tie, what is it you think you're going to do to get the bill to be better and get it through the Senate? And the answer is nothing. So this is it. You can either be for the biggest tax increase in history, you can be for weakening our control on the border, you can be for allowing illegal immigrants to get tax-paid money, allowing adults who refuse to work to get tax-paid money. And remember, the Democrat comments on Medicaid are virtually all lies. There are no children who are affected by this. There are no families that are affected by this. This goes after people who are either illegal immigrants, committing fraud, or refusing to go to work. Now, overwhelmingly, the American people think that that's legitimate. So as the debate goes on, my hope is that the House Republicans will decide in the end that this is a big step. Remember, governing is a motion picture. It's not a Polaroid snapshot. After this bill, there are going to be more bills. There are going to be more opportunities. And it's important for the president's momentum that this pass, that he get it signed, and then they can turn to the next big achievement.
Yeah, and there will be another reconciliation opportunity later in the year to get more spending cuts and other priorities through. But you write out exactly what it means to the average family out there in your most recent piece, Newt, and it's really important to point this out because those people may very well hold those congressmen accountable. Come the midterm elections, you write the average family of four would have paid an extra $1,700 in taxes, about 9 weeks worth of groceries, if they vote no. Killing the bill would have cut the child tax credit. And you also talk about small business. 26 million small businesses would have seen their taxes increase to 43%. These are huge impacts, and that affects growth overall in the broader economy, and it affects, obviously, the fate of families across the country.
You know, you can understand why the Democrats would vote no, because if they could stop this bill,
no, I still can't understand that.
It'll crush the economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I mean,
look, it'll crush the economy,
they want that going
and the Republicans
into the midterms.
will lose.
Exactly, exactly.
That's exactly
so it's
right.
all political.
Well, I think, look, it's a great risk the Democrats are taking, because if they become the party, additionally the party of Mamdani, if they become the party now of huge tax increases, that's going to be a pretty big burden to carry. You might think of it as an elephant on their back as they go into the election next year.
You know, President Trump has shown such practicality when it comes to a number of issues, not just about taxes and the border, but also about China. And the DOJ announced 2 Chinese nationals were arrested yesterday for allegedly spying on and collecting intelligence from U.S. Navy bases. They tried to recruit other military members to serve China's foreign intelligence. This is just a story that never quits. And I spoke with the president about the China threat and how he deals with it on Sunday Morning Futures. I want to get your take on how he responds here. Watch this.
We had a deal with China where it was 145% tariffs. And I will tell you, everything stopped in China.
It seems like you go so far with China, but you don't sort of use the leverage that you can use. I mean, look,
If I ever had to use it, I'd use it. But when there's no reason to use it, that's good too.
Well, we did just arrest 3 or 4 Chinese nationals who tried to bring a pathogen into the country that gets people sick and destroys food supply. We've got hacking.
You don't know where that came from, though. I mean, did that come from the country, or is that 3 wackos that happened to carry something? You know, you just don't.
Well, there was one that he signed that he would be, one of them signed a paper saying that he would value Mao Zedong's value system. So there was that. And then they hacked into our telecom system. They've been stealing intellectual property. They fentanyl, COVID. I mean, you know, all of this stuff. So how do you negotiate with obviously a bad actor and trust them on economics?
You don't think we do that to them? We do.
So
We do a lot of things.
that's the way the world works?
It's the way the world works. It's a nasty world.
And then you just do a trade deal?
We do. Well, we made a lot of money with this trade deal. You know, I do a trade deal if it works. We made a lot of money with the trade deal.
You think that China is going to stop bullying companies to give them information in terms of in exchange for getting those rare earth minerals now?
Companies shouldn't put themselves in that position. You know, they really shouldn't. Now, I will say this. China right now needs those companies much more than they needed them 2 years ago.
So, Newt, I want to get your reaction here because obviously people were waiting on a trade deal with China. The July 9th tariff pause ends next week. With most nations, the China pause will end in August. What are your expectations in terms of all these trade deals? That will be the next big issue that the markets focus on, certainly, after the big bill passes the House this week.
Look, I always recommend to people to read Trump's first big bestseller, The Art of the Deal, because it tells you a lot about Trump. He's made tons of deals in his career. He's gotten to be very successful at it. And he's pretty confident that most days he can out-negotiate other people. My hunch is, and we've never talked about it this directly, but my hunch is that he has a very clear-cut yardstick. Is America better off? Does America get more jobs? Is there more investment in America? If the answer is yes, it's a good deal and he'll take it. If the answer is no, he's not going to take the deal, as he just proved to the Canadians. Trump understands better than any American president we're the biggest economy. Countries need access to us far more than we need access to them, and that gives him the leverage as a deal maker to consistently pressure other countries into giving America a better deal than they got in the last 30 years. And it's beginning to really work.
Do you think that voters will hold the Democrats accountable for their lack of putting America first, Newt? I mean, you've got the midterms coming up in 26. How do you see things happening going into that?
Well, the best analyst I know is a guy named Seth Keshel, who studies registration by county and state. Just issued a report 2 days ago that in every single county in Pennsylvania, Republicans have gained ground. Every single county. And so Keshel thinks we're probably going to keep the House and could keep the House by a big margin. The Democrats have got radicalism like Mamdani and AOC, and the Democrats have a history now of voting for tax increases, and the Democrats have to carry the burden of the Biden record. If the Republicans campaign strategically, they will have an astonishingly good year next year, and will be much like Franklin Roosevelt in 1934. It will consolidate the Trump majority and give the president 2 more years to continue making very aggressive reforms in what is now a 90-year-old system that's frankly corrupt and bureaucratic and incompetent and badly needs overhaul.
All right, we will leave it there. Great analysis as always. Great to see you, Newt. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is noon, right? Listen, 6 months ago to the day, I spoke on the House floor about my optimism for America's future. I was optimistic because the American people gave Republicans a historic opportunity, an opportunity to enact the largest tax cut in American history, to finally secure our borders and unleash American energy, an opportunity to put America first again. Well, I am proud to say, House Republicans, we delivered. And thanks to the work of the House Republican Conference and our president, President Donald J. Trump, Americans have certainty. They will keep more money in their pockets and have the safety and security that they deserve. House Republicans remained unified. No one thought we could do it. Everybody doubted us, didn't they, Mr. Speaker? Right? They doubted us. But here we are again. Mr. Whip, what are we, 6-0?
Yeah, nobody in this room doubted us.
No, nobody here doubted us. But we are unified. We delivered on our promises to the American people. No taxes on tip. No taxes on overtime, tax relief to seniors, enhanced child care tax credits, elimination of the death tax, more ICE agents. We're finishing the border wall and funding the Golden Dome. And for all the fear-mongering that goes out there from the Democrats, we actually secured Medicaid for those who need it most. Vulnerable Americans, pregnant women, and the disabled. Compared to the Democrats, who would rather give Medicaid to illegal aliens and MS-13 members. Democrats are fear-mongering because they have no vision, no plan, and no leader. But guess what? We have a leader. And our leader is President Donald Trump. And lastly, let's not forget that actual fiscal sanity is being restored. Because of our work, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is headed to the president's desk for signature. And today marks the end of the waste, the fraud, and the abuse of American taxpayers' dollars. It marks the end of higher gas prices, the end of higher energy costs and higher grocery bills. And because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, Joe Biden's border crisis is over. Listen, I applaud my colleagues who worked tirelessly. I don't think the Speaker and the Whip and the leader have slept in days. But they've worked tirelessly to ensure that we actually delivered on our promises. And I thank President Trump for his leadership in getting this bill across the finish line. Without his leadership, none of this would have been possible. His vision, none of this would have been possible. But today, we passed actual transformational legislation, legislation that will impact every family. Tomorrow, we celebrate our nation's independence, and we set out to spread the message of this historic achievement. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to celebrate. President Trump and the American people's agenda has been delivered. And the man who probably had one of the most difficult jobs was Mr. Emmer, who actually had to whip and count all the votes and get everybody into line. So without further ado, our whip, Tom Emmer.
You know, Mr. Speaker, they always complain about such a small majority, but for us old hockey players, it's just fewer numbers to count. It works out much better. On November 5th, Americans elected a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican president with a mandate for change, a mandate to undo the failed policies of the last 4 years and to deliver on President Donald J. Trump's America First agenda. Today, we're all proud to report that by passing our One Big Beautiful Bill and sending it to President Trump's desk to be signed into law, we are fulfilling that mandate. This is a once-in-a-generation piece of legislation that secures our border, unleashes American energy, allows families to keep more of their hard-earned taxpayer dollars in their pockets, cuts waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs like SNAP and Medicaid, modernizes our air traffic control system, strengthens our national defense, and so much more, all while implementing the largest cut in mandatory spending in our history. To put it simply, this bill is President Trump's Make America Great Again agenda being codified into law, From Minnesota to Texas and Maine to California, there are wins in this legislation for every single American. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of the Republican team that got this thing across the finish line. I want to say thank you to our Speaker, Mike Johnson. We should also thank our leader, Steve Scalise. And while she won't tell you what she's doing, we got to give a big thank you to our conference chair, Lisa McLean. I want to thank the chairman of all our committees that worked on the reconciliation instructions for doing all the hard work behind the scenes of putting this bill together. And most importantly, and people who know me know that it's about the team, I want to thank the members of our House Republican Conference for uniting as a team and getting this thing done. As we've said a million times before, do not underestimate the Republican majority in the House, the mighty majority in the House. This legislative process may not always look pretty, and there will always be many tough fights, but one thing is certain: we will always deliver on our promises to the American people. And with that, I turn it over to our great leader, Mr. Scalise.
Well, thank you, Whip, and what a beautiful day here in America. It is the golden age of America again. America's coming back. And I tell you, a lot of people wrote this bill off for dead. Nobody said it would be easy. But you know what? We didn't come here to do easy things. We came here to do big things. We came here to make history. We came here to deliver on the promises we made to the American people, to fight for them and to take power out of Washington and give it back to those families who have been struggling for way too long. Now, we had a little bit of debate on the floor today. You got to see a difference between the two parties in Washington, maybe more crystallized than we've ever seen before. And I think that's a good thing. I hope America watched all of it. Watched Democrats falling asleep behind their leader as he went on and on trying to scare the American people with lies, with scare tactics, with depressing stories about things that will never happen unless Democrats keep running this country. But the American people said, we will not live in fear. We are not a country of fear. We're a country of hope. We're a country of optimism. We're a country that believes our brightest days are ahead, and they elected Republicans to deliver on those brighter days. And I think maybe their leader wanted to speak for hours and hours and break records because they wanted to stand in the way of history. But history is not going to be denied. We were elected with a purpose. Donald Trump ran all around this country. He went to swing states that they said Republicans could never win. And he didn't give different messages to different places. A lot of us traveled with the president. And the one thing you can say about Donald Trump is it doesn't matter where he went. When you listen to his speech, it was probably going to be a little bit longer than the paper that was written. Might have been about a 15-minute long speech because President Trump speaks from the heart. President Trump expanded our base. It wasn't just the typical Republican voters. It was people of all walks of life, people who had given up on Washington because Washington gave up on them, and they finally saw a leader who was willing to fight for the hardworking people of this country. That's who Donald Trump has always been. And all the people that knock Donald Trump ignore one important fact. There is no better, more passionate fighter for America and its hope and promise than Donald J. Trump. And President Trump said at every stop, if you elect me, if you give me a Republican House and a Republican Senate, these are the things I will do. It was kind of historic in a lot of ways. It should be commonplace that a presidential candidate runs on specific things and then delivers on every single thing he ran on. He said, I'm going to secure America's border. His opponents said they were going to keep the border open. He said, I'm going to actually make our country energy independent again and end the war, the attack on American energy that we've seen for 4 years, crush jobs, crush the economy, force families to pay too much for gasoline, and embolden the enemies of our nation like Russia, Iran, and others. And those days are over with this one big, beautiful bill. And President Trump said a lot of other things, but what American people knew about not only electing Donald Trump, but about keeping this House majority and about electing a Republican Senate is that they said, we're going to entrust this group of people to go and be different and to deliver on those promises. And when you look through all the historic things in this one big, beautiful bill, the wins for hard-working families, win after win after win, it's delivering on those promises. We are going to see economic growth. When Donald Trump signs this bill tomorrow on America's birthday, the independence of our nation, you will start seeing historic growth like we've never seen before. I've been proud to work on a lot of important pieces of legislation. There is not one group of people, and there is not one bigger piece of legislation that will deliver more great benefits for the hardworking families who have been struggling in this country than this one big, beautiful bill. There's a reason it was hard. There's a reason that it wasn't 2 committees like Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It was 11 committees involved. Historic. We made great historic reforms in education policy. First ever repeal of a Second Amendment tax in the history of our country. A constitutional right being taxed, gone in this bill. You've heard about a lot of the other provisions. One of the things you didn't hear about is school choice. Federal school choice for the first time ever. So low-income families will have an opportunity to get their kids out of failing schools. Every Democrat voted against all of those things. And they're going to have to explain that. Once the lies and the hot air and the long-winded speeches are over, people are going to go, I'm better off today now that this bill's signed into law and all the things you said didn't happen, but the great things that Donald Trump and this Republican majority promised did. And that's the testament to the non-ending hard work of this group of people. And I will tell you, I've worked alongside a lot of leaders, and I've been blessed to be a part of leadership in majorities, mostly. Minorities, too. It's a lot more fun to be in the majority. But you get in the majority to do the big things, to do the hard work. And believe me, this was hard work. You all know it. You all know how many times this bill could have died if we just said, you know what, it's probably not going to get there. There's a lot of reasons why you could say it's just going to fail. But this group always said from the beginning, and we told you this and we meant it, failure's not an option. Because the American people are counting on us. There's too much at stake. There was too much at stake from the very beginning, and we knew the power of what this bill will do for those families who were counting on us. And so every time it would have been easy to give up, we just thought about those families who entrusted us with their vote, and we had to deliver for them. We figured out a way to come together. People you never would have thought showing up voting yes. And I will tell you, all the leaders I've served with, I don't think there's one that held this group together, complicated majority, narrow majority, narrowest we've ever had. We were down a 2-vote majority at the beginning of this process. And Speaker Mike Johnson never one day wavered on his commitment. Donald Trump absolutely was our closer, and Donald Trump never stopped. Every day was there in the fight. Who do I need to call? What do I need to do? No president more directly engaged. And believe me, tomorrow at the White House, you're going to see a proud president who's ready to deliver on his promise to the American people. But this bill wouldn't be heading over to the White House tonight without the incredible yeoman's unwavering support of Speaker of the House, my dear friend, Mike Johnson, our leader.
Thank you. This is the vote tally card. We're going to frame this one, okay? 218, 214. Listen, I'm not going to give you a long speech. A lot has been said today, and these people are exhausted. A couple of us quite literally haven't slept in 2 days, so I'm a danger to myself and others right now. I'm not going to speak off the cuff. I'll just say this. I mean, many of you have asked me this question in the hall over the last couple of days. But when it looked like that we might actually deliver this thing, particularly this morning, how did you know? I mean, what kept you going? Why did you think this was possible? You guys made an audacious plan. You brought the most comprehensive, complicated piece of legislation, probably, arguably in the top 2 or 3 in the history of the Congress, with the smallest margin in U.S. history, which we had for a big chunk of the first 100 days. And you put this audacious timeline. You said you were going to pass it out of the House by Memorial Day. I mean, some of you openly laughed at me when I said that back in early February. And then we said we would get it done by July 4th. We beat Memorial Day by 4 days, and we got this one done a day early. I just want to point out, okay?
This schedule, amended budget.
So the question was, I mean, like, why? Why did you do that? Why did you think that was possible? Because I would sum it up with one word. It's belief. Okay, we had a vision for what we wanted to do as a group. We believed in the election cycle last fall that we were going to be given this great blessing of unified government, that we would have the White House and the Senate and the House aligned, in alignment, unified government. And we did not want to waste that opportunity because we understand the history that comes along with it, the opportunity that we can do for the country, and we believe that we would have that chance. And then I believe in the people that are standing here behind me. I believe in this group, every single one of them individually. Some of them are more fun to deal with than others, you know. I mean that with the greatest level of respect. I love every single one of my colleagues. You know, even the ones I got to spend the more time with, right? Because everybody's here, their motive is right, their heart is right. They're trying to do right for their constituents. They're trying to serve the greatest nation in the history of the world that we're going to celebrate tomorrow. We don't take that lightly. I know their hearts, and I know what their skill sets are, and I know what they bring to the table, and I get up every day excited because I know that each of them are going to bring that to the table, and they're going to serve their constituents. You could not have a greater group of public servants than the people standing in this room right here. They will give their all for this country. And man, that's what the framers intended when they put this thing together 249 years ago. This is what it was about. So I believed in this vision. I believed in the group. I believe in America. I believe we have the greatest nation. I'm going to say this very simply, and everybody here would articulate it in their own way. We had a tough 4 years before this last election cycle. America we were in deep trouble. And we knew that if we won, and we believed we would, we knew that if we got unified government, we'd have to quite literally fix every area of public policy. Everything was an absolute disaster under the Biden-Harris radical, woke, progressive Democrat regime. And we took the best effort that we could in one big, beautiful bill to fix as much of it as we could. And I am so grateful to God that we got that done as we did. Because of the dedication, yeah. Lastly, it's no secret, I do believe in God. I believe in that motto that's up that I referenced in the floor speech a little while ago. I believe that is what has made our nation the greatest in the history of the world. And some people shake their heads and they think that's old-fashioned or something. That is a fact. When the framers put this together, they stepped out in faith. They did something that no nation had ever done before. The great statesman, philosopher G.K. Chesterton of Great Britain said, America is the only nation in the world that was founded upon a creed. And he said it's listed with almost theological lucidity or clarity in the nation's birth certificate, the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that we recognize, we boldly proclaim the self-evident truth that our rights do not come from the government, they come from God himself. He's the one that gave us our rights. That's right. Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, we are dedicated to this proposition, to one nation, under God. A government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. This is an experiment. It's only 249 years, y'all. That's not a long span of time in human history. It's just a blip on the whole scale of human history. It is up to us to save it. It's up to the duly elected representatives of the people to come here and represent. And it's up to every single one of us, of the people, by the people, for the people, all of us. So you got to be engaged, and we got to pass this along to the next generation. Reagan reminded us, freedom's not inherited in the bloodstream. It's got to be protected. It's got to be fought for. It's got to be taught to the next generation so that they will have the same liberty, opportunity, and security that we have all known and too often take it for granted. So I just want to say, we're going to get to the main event here. We're about to sign this bill and get it over to the White House, okay? Some of these men and women have got to go catch flights and stuff. So we're going to sign this real quick, and I'll take a few questions. But I just want to say this: do not take for granted what we have been given. This grand experiment in self-governance. We can preserve it, but we got to do it all together. God bless you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Run it. I want to be the runner. That's the coolest. Zach, y'all head down. We're going to head out, Tim. Yeah, back to Iowa. Where that fighter pin? No, that's right.
Let's talk about this with Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and Molly Hemingway, editor-in-chief of The Federalist. Welcome to both of you. Molly Hemingway, you first. What do you make of this thing? I don't know. Treachery, sordid, subversion. I mean, there's all kinds of adjectives can be used. But this was one unsavory, sordid part of American history, that's for sure. How do you see it, Molly?
Objectively speaking, this is the worst scandal we've ever seen from our government in our nation's history. And these recent disclosures of information, I'm sure Greg will agree with me, as people who have covered the Russia collusion hoax for many years, are so helpful at understanding precisely how the hoax got going. And yes, it is this intelligence community assessment that is ordered by Obama at a time when actually the intelligence is suggesting the opposite of what that ICA eventually says, the intelligence community assessment. And what we learned from these documents is that people within the intelligence community were pretty much screaming from the rooftops that they did not believe that the intelligence supported the idea that Putin was trying to help Trump, and yet Brennan and other bad actors just shut them down, ignored them, told them that they were all wet, and just pushed through anyway so that this thing could get going. And of course, it was so damaging to that first Trump administration. It's a really big deal.
I mean, Greg Jarrett, a lot of people, look, I'm no expert. You wrote a book on the subject. Molly's written about it. I'm just saying a lot of people, even in the intelligence area, even whistleblowers coming to the front now, they said this thing should have been dead and buried a long time ago. The question is, all right, Brennan, sure. Comey, sure. Okay, they probably wanted to resuscitate it. What role did former President Barack Obama play if there was a resuscitation of these phony charges that were, whatever we're going to call them, treacherous or sordid or subversion or whatever? What role did he play?
Role in all of this, overseeing it. And I think President Trump's venom is understandable as directed against Barack Obama. And Comey, Brennan, and Clapper, I call them the three stooges of Obama's national security team. You know, the documents show that all of them were aiding and abetting the scheme cooked up by Hillary Clinton to frame Trump as a Russian asset, even though they knew at the outset it was all fabricated. Here's the thing, Larry. Instead of stepping forward and telling the truth to the American people in the summer of 2016 when they knew it, they kept silent. And they watched as James Comey launched his damaging investigation of Trump without any credible evidence. And these new declassified documents show how they scuttled an intel briefing that concluded there was no Russian interference and conspired to replace it with an intelligence assessment that said just the opposite. And then, to make matters worse, they inserted the phony dossier into that intelligence assessment, pretending it was true, even though the FBI had already debunked it. Clapper then leaked the dossier to CNN, and the mainstream media was off and running, convicting Trump in the court of public opinion without ever a shred of any plausible evidence. It truly was the dirtiest trick in American political history.
You know, Molly, I mean, my history here is imperfect, to be sure. But as I recall the story, even before Mr. Trump was inaugurated in January of 2017, even before he was actually sworn in, Comey meets with him, Brennan meets with him, I don't know, Clapper was probably there. I'm not sure who all was there, but those guys were there. And they're telling him he's in deep trouble because of X, Y, and Z, even though X, Y, and Z were a pack of lies and that they had resuscitated those lies. And then later on, we found out that whistleblowers also said that there were a bunch of lies. But they actually went in before he was actually sworn in as president and told him they're going to go after him, and then just plagued most of his first term. I mean, really? How is this possible? How can this go unpunished? That's what I'm asking. I'm not the lawyer. I'm not a cop. I'm a journalist. I just want to know, how can this possibly go unpunished?
Well, again, Obama may have immunity for what he did, but that is what is so interesting about this. That meeting that you're talking about was where they delivered this intelligence assessment to Obama and to Trump. The ordering of that assessment was done by Obama precisely so that it could be briefed to Trump and that it could be leaked that it was briefed to Trump. This is what got the entire Russia collusion hoax going. Normally, an intelligence assessment would take months, maybe years to put together. They put it together in 2 weeks, precisely so that CNN could leak the details of this dossier and that Trump's presidency could be destroyed. Efforts to destroy a presidency are seditious, and this is a very serious issue for these leaders in the intel community. And I think that they should be much more worried about the legal consequences, unfortunately, than Obama should.
Yes, well, I love that word, seditious. Got to put that back into the riff. That's a fabulous word. I was groping for that word for the last hour or so. It's absolutely perfect, the word seditious. And Greg Jarrett, I mean, Steele was a lying paid informant who was actually fired. Now, they built that up. Hillary's campaign or the Hillary Foundation or something financed this whole thing. But Brennan knew that, didn't he? Comey knew that, didn't he? Did Obama know that the Steele dossier was a fraud to begin with?
There were 2 meetings. July 28th was the first one at the White House. Obama was there, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Biden. And, you know, Brennan had rushed over to tell him what Hillary had done, invented this thing, and had commissioned a dossier, was financing it. You know, Steele was triple dipping. He was getting paid by the FBI, by Hillary Clinton's campaign, and the DNC. And at one point in time, you know, the FBI found out he was lying, so they fired him. Well, did Comey tell the FISA court when he sought those warrants to spy? No. He, in fact, vouched for Steele, saying he was credible and reliable, and didn't tell the judges, oh, by the way, we fired him, and oh, by the way, we've also debunked the dossier. No, they used it to manipulate the justice system for surveillance purposes on the Trump campaign.
Molly Hemingway, I'm going to jump shift. I'm going to jump shift. The same crowd, the same group of lovelies was at it again with the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up. Same group. Clapper in the lead, Brennan in the lead, 51 intel people. All right, now this is in September-ish of the late September of the 2020 election. They put together, whatever, 51 intel people say it was all Russian disinformation. Here we go again. Russia, Russia, Russia continues to play. And they continue to lie. And it turns out the FBI had the damn thing and knew all about it, as did other people. And yet this lie and this cover-up and this left-wing media collusion continued. So, you know, I'm just thinking as we're talking about this, and I'm reading about this in recent days, Molly Hemingway, no wonder President Trump gets pretty angry about this stuff. Here it goes. I mean, you can't blame the guy. I know this is a providential presidency. He's there because God wanted to save him. I get all that. But sometimes you're allowed to get angry. I mean, here it goes all over again. And he believes his own Justice Department should have an objective, analytical view of this whole story. You can't blame him for getting a little angry. Can you, Molly Hemingway? Really?
Well, Larry, not just the president, but a lot of Americans are livid about this as well.
Yes.
And I think it's worth remembering that none of this would be possible without a complicit media that willingly participate in these info ops perpetrated by bad actors in the intelligence community. Some of the same people who uncritically regurgitated the Russia collusion hoax also uncritically regurgitated the lie that Hunter Biden's evidence of family business corruption was a Russian plant. And they do it with other situations as well. They have destroyed Americans' trust, whatever trust they should have had, in the intelligence community because of how they've politicized things and because of how the media have gone along with this. And instead of getting awards, they should be ignored or, in fact, I think maybe some of their role in the Russia collusion hoax might need to be investigated as well.
Seditious, Molly. It's a terrific word. Wish I had thought of it, but we're going to put it to work, give you full faith and credit for it. Thanks to both of you. It's a pleasure to see you both again. Molly Hemingway, Greg Jarrett, we appreciate it very, very much.
President Putin invited me to get involved. He wants to get involved. I believe he wants to get it over with. Now, I've said that a few times, and I've been disappointed because I'd have like a great call with him, and then missiles would be lobbed into Kiev or some other place, and you'd have 60 people laying on a road dying. I said, that's cold. I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine.
President Trump setting the stakes for his summit with Vladimir Putin this Friday in Alaska. European Union leaders released a joint statement welcoming the president's efforts, writing this: the people of Ukraine must have the freedom to decide their future. The path to peace cannot be decided without Ukraine. Meaningful negotiations can only take place in the context of a ceasefire or reduction of hostilities. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has wider implications for European and international security. We share the conviction that a diplomatic solution must protect Ukraine's and Europe's vital security interests. Now, importantly to note, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban was the only leader who did not sign that statement. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Delighted to be here, Maria.
So before we get into the particulars of what you think this meeting is going to look like, isn't it interesting that European leaders right now appear desperate? They desperately want a voice at this table, and they are not getting it. It doesn't appear to me. You saw that Orban was the only one who did not sign that statement, as European leaders want to set the terms, but they're not setting the terms, General.
No, I disagree with you, Maria. The European leaders are very much involved in this. They had a meeting in the United Kingdom. The vice president attended, Secretary of State, Kellogg, Witkoff, they were on the phone. The European leaders from the major countries were there, and they counted Putin's offer which is to take an incredible amount of terrain away from Ukraine, the most defensible terrain that Putin, by the way, Maria, could not take in 2014. And for the last 2 years, he's been trying to take this fortified belt that he wants now Ukraine to give to him. He's been unable to do it and has lost hundreds of thousands of troops trying. That's where the major fight has been taking place over the last 2 years. So that obviously is not going to take place. Ukraine is not going to give that up. The Europeans are supporting that, and the United States, who attended those meetings, found all of that very favorable. They briefed the President of the United States. They're going to meet again with the President by phone on Wednesday to discuss this. And I think the United States and the Europeans and Ukraine are going into this meeting with Putin united, frankly. And this is Putin's initiative, Maria. He wanted this, and it's pretty obvious why he wants it. He wants to be on a world stage with the world's global leader, President Trump. That gives him one legitimacy. He's an international pariah, a war criminal, for sure, that's subject to arrest if he goes to almost any other country. And this will give him that kind of legitimacy. But that's only going to last a short period of time. The second thing is, and he's accomplished that, he wants the sanctions to be delayed. So the president is willing to do that, certainly, because he's interested in trying to get a deal here. Yeah, I'll delay the sanctions. Let's see what you have to say. I think the president goes into this meeting with the wind at his back, based on what he did with Iran and very decisive action that he took there. He's already stepped up military support for Ukraine, and he's got sanctions in the offing and tariffs as well that are going to be significant, and Putin knows that. Yeah. So I think the president goes in, he's going to want a ceasefire. This is what the president's been trying to get for 6 to 8 months. He's going to say, show me what we're going to talk about, a ceasefire. How are we going to put this together? And as he said, if Putin isn't sincere about doing this, if this is just another ploy of Putin's that he's been doing for 6 to 8 months under the cover of negotiations, delay and stall, no progress being made. If that's what he's really up to here, I think the president is going to take a strong stand and tell him that there's no progress here. You're not willing to make some genuine commitment to a ceasefire. There's no sense in us continuing to discuss things. Putin's going to talk nice. He's going to talk about the economic benefit of Russia and the United States. We've got to get back to where we were, Mr. President. All of that talk, nice stuff that the president is so used to will continue here. But the real issue is, are you willing to stop the war or not, Mr. Putin? That is the issue. And show me the evidence that there's real substance in doing something like that. Yeah. So we'll see. This is Putin's initiative. The president is willing to go there and see what he's got to say. And if it's not real, I don't think the president is going to put up with it.
Well, I love the fact that it's, Putin's initiative. And I also love the fact of Trump's choice of Alaska to have this meeting, rich in history, in symbolism, and strategic foresight when you consider that Alaska was once, back in the day, Russian territory. Sold by the Tsar Alexander II to the United States in 1867. And this is the place that President Trump decides on the meeting where Putin has to come back to the United States for the first time in, what, a decade?
Yeah, well, certainly the place is convenient for both, and I think the president enjoyed the idea of hosting them in the United States as opposed to going to a foreign country. But the place isn't that critical. It's the substance of what is going to take place here, obviously, that we're all paying attention to. And the president is very much aware that the ball will eventually be, if there's a real deal here, be in Zelensky's court. Remember what Zelensky from the outset has said, he's willing to go to a ceasefire unconditionally after the president put some pressure on him. And that's been Ukraine's position for months now. It's Putin who's been in the stall, not willing to go to a comprehensive ceasefire. He may offer the president some portion of a ceasefire, no more airstrikes, or a sectorial ceasefire in certain parts of the terrain. But that's not what the president's after here. He wants to shut this thing down. Let's go to a ceasefire and then begin real end-of-war negotiations. And we have to provide some security for Ukraine going forward in those negotiations so that there's some guarantees that there's not going to be violations. So there's a lot to be done here. But the start point, Maria, for the president will be, Putin, are you really sincere about going to a ceasefire here? Are you willing to do that? Otherwise, we're wasting a lot of our time here.
I guess what I'm questioning is how different the plan is, which Steve Witkoff was leading to the plan that the Europeans want. And that's why initially I thought, well, they're desperate for a real voice at the table because, they don't want Putin to take any more territory. And I'm wondering if that's what the plans are from the initial deal led by Steve Witkoff and President Trump. I mean, there's also news this morning about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defending his plan to occupy Gaza City soon after his security cabinet approved that on Friday. So those two issues right now front and center, General. But your thoughts on how different that plan is from Witkoff's initial thoughts?
Well, there was great confusion for a couple of days in terms of what was the Russian offer. And I think there was some misunderstanding about what it really is. And then what it really is that he wants all of the Donetsk region, some 30% that Ukraine still owes, which is the most significant portion of the region. He wants Ukraine to give that up. That's not going to happen. And the president knows that. He knows the facts. If there was some kind of a swap that made some sense to the Ukrainians here, that's maybe a possibility. But even that's remote. What the president's really interested in, stop the war, stop shooting at each other, stop killing each other, and then let's start to talk about land and security guarantees and the other. But that's job one.
But do the Europeans know that? Do the Europeans know that that's not realistic?
The Europeans' number one recommendation to the president is ceasefire. I mean, I don't know why you're trying to separate the Europeans and the president. They're united. Okay. He said it himself.
Okay.
And he's been talking to them all week. And they're going to talk to him again on Wednesday.
General, thank you. What a meeting. We look forward to it. And we will look forward to talking with you about it after it's done. General Jack Keane, thank you so much, sir. Joining me right now, the head of the U.S. Federal Housing FHFA Director and Fannie Mae Chairman, Bill Pulte. Bill, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Always good to see you.
I want to get your take on all of the news and, of course, that criminal referral that you sent over Lisa Cook and others on mortgage fraud. But first, talk to us about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. What is President Trump looking to do with these mortgage originators, enormous companies?
Well, the president did something great, if you recall, in his first term, and that is doing nothing. Everybody wanted to basically steal this company from the American taxpayers, and President Trump deserves great credit for saying, no, thank you. We are going to do what's in the best interest of people. Maria, he got approached, rather, to sell these companies for about $100 billion, if you can believe that, $150 billion. Today, that value is worth anywhere between $500 and $700 billion. I think it's going to $1 trillion and potentially even higher. So President Trump has exercised great judgment, and he'll exercise, in my view, that same judgment in deciding whether or not to do something with regard to Fannie and Freddie.
Well, this is a big story. A lot of our viewers want to know about it. Investors love these companies because they're incredibly important. What are we talking about? $7 trillion in assets between the two companies' balance sheets?
Yeah, $7.8 trillion, and it's going higher, and frankly, it's going to continue to go higher. These are, in my view, in terms of assets, the biggest companies in the world, these two biggest companies. And no other president, until President Trump showed up on the scene, even knew that they existed. Biden didn't really know anything existed. He certainly didn't know Fannie and Freddie existed. We came in, there were 16,000 people working from home. We ordered them all back to work. We're getting the earnings going. Money's pouring in like never before. And it's all because President Trump is making this a priority.
And has the president decided on the lead banker to take these companies public once again? Is it going to be a $30 billion IPO?
He has not made any decisions. That will be on his own time, in his own way, in his own form. And I would defer to the president on what or if he wants to do anything here. This is entirely up to him. He has the best instincts, frankly, of anybody I've ever met. And I've met a lot of really successful people. So I'm going to rely on his instincts. If he says go, we'll go. But that's entirely up to the president.
When would a deal be happening? Later this year?
We'll see. Again, that's entirely up to the president. I think we have a bunch of different options. I would say this. The demand for this product, the demand for this deal is so significant. The president has had, and we've had, banks calling us. They're still calling us. I mean, you could have all of the banks in the world want this deal. So we'll see what happens, but it's got to be done if it's done on the president's terms, and I'm very confident it will be. And frankly, I think it's going to be oversubscribed.
Yeah, and I know that executives from Bank of America and Citi and J.P. Morgan have been in the Oval Office trying to get this business. But I want to talk about the scandals that we're talking about as well today, because we are now looking at 10 years of scandals against President Trump. We're going to get to Lisa Cook and potential mortgage fraud in a moment, but it started with Russia collusion, went into impeachments, indictments, even January 6th, according to Ed Martin at the DOJ. And here's what Ed Martin told me yesterday. Got to get your take on this. Watch.
And there's a group of us working on January 6th. What we've learned is that the federal government, the Department of Justice, but other aspects, targeted these citizens. They basically turned government on to make the hoax work. So I'm not talking about somebody that pushes a cop. That's a charge you can look at and charge. I'm talking about that the FBI and others were putting American citizens on terrorism watch lists. They were auditing their IRS tax returns. They were targeting the American people. They were taking massive amounts of resources and moving them from fighting, child trafficking and fighting real corruption and saying we have to move everybody to look at the Capitol siege. It was a political hoax that was driven by Garland, Lisa Monaco, and others. There's a guy named Robert Jackson, who is the prosecutor guy. And what you see is Lisa Monaco's Justice Department acting in ways we've never seen before. This is and when we show all that, and we're writing reports regularly on it, it's not one aspect. The federal court system was used in a way. The jails were used in a way to punish people. It's foreign. They didn't do this to the terrorists after 9/11, and they were doing it to American citizens.
What about the January 6th committee? Did they destroy evidence? Is there criminality there?
Of course. We're all in that too, and trust me, a lot of people did not get a pardon that were involved in the select committee, and they ought to be keeping an eye on their mailbox, because there's a lot to be asked about.
I mean, Director, what they did here was put people who were going and, peacefully protesting against the election on no-fly lists. And the DOJ did nothing about it. It feels like you finally have some resources in the DOJ. You've sent several criminal referrals. All the while, we actually may have witnessed mortgage fraud. Tell me about the criminal referral that you sent to the DOJ over Lisa Cook. What did she do specifically, Bill?
Well, Lisa Cook has big problems. They're going to continue to get bigger. Her statements that she made last night, I think, only make her situation worse. It's very odd to see people try to twist backways, sideways, and upside down to justify mortgage fraud. This is a very serious crime. Mortgage fraud, it carries up to 30-year prison sentences. I believe the president has ample cause to fire Lisa Cook. Whether he wants to do that or not is entirely up to the president. However, we will go where mortgage fraud is. If mortgage fraud is with a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. If you commit mortgage fraud in President Trump's America, we're going to come after you. And Lisa Cook is no exception to that. I've also been very surprised, Maria, I would say, with the lack of response and the mismanagement, the continued mismanagement by Jay Powell throughout all of this. You would think when there's an alleged crime that somebody would be able to handle things properly. But unfortunately, I think Jay Powell is actually walking himself into this whole situation. He used the federal spokespeople last night, the Federal Reserve spokespeople, to circulate her statement. I don't know why anyone would support somebody having and declaring on a mortgage contract that they have two primary residences. That is fraud, and we are going to prosecute it, and I hope that the DOJ will take it very seriously.
So according to mortgage documents, you write to the DOJ, to Pam Bondi, that Lisa Cook falsified bank documents and property records to acquire more favorable loan terms?
Well, of course, you can't declare that in her case, she had a home in Michigan, and then 2 weeks later, she gets a loan in Michigan for her home. She declares it as her primary principal residence, and then literally 2 weeks later, she goes to an Atlanta condo, buys an Atlanta condo, secures a loan, and also declares that as her primary residence. We all know primary or principal, that means one. That means the lead dog. That means what house are you living in? And in this case, we have a Federal Reserve governor who's in charge of setting interest rates, running this entire economy, right hand to Jerome Powell, committing, in my view, mortgage fraud. This can't happen. I think it gives the president enormous cause to fire her. I think she will resign. Frankly, I think she's very stupid if she doesn't resign.
Well, President Trump posted on Truth Social, Lisa Cook should resign. Bill, of course, this is on the heels of your criminal referral. You listed in that referral how she listed 2 different homes as her primary residence. In a 2-week period, you also sent criminal referrals over others. Now, Cook responded. She says, I have no intention of being bullied to step down. I am gathering accurate information to answer any legitimate questions, Bill. Is that the statement you're referring to, saying that that's not adequate?
Well, not only is that not accurate, I mean, first of all, intention of being bullied. The question for Ms. Cook is very simple. Did you sign these mortgage documents? Of course she did. And then on top of that, did she also declare primary residency in both Michigan and Atlanta? The answer is yes. So, she can play this all she wants, but, people are smart. And I'll tell you this right now. This is like the most viral story in the country right now. People are sick and tired of one rule for certain people and another rule for other people. And it's got to stop, and I think it's going to stop with the Federal Reserve governor. And frankly, I would be surprised if she's not suspended by the Federal Reserve this week. I mean, why are they going into Jackson Hole talking about this nonsense? This is supposed to be the biggest week for the economy. And here we've got this circus clown running around saying that she's being bullied when really she was committing mortgage fraud.
Well, I mean, you also sent criminal referrals to others. Do you have grand juries in place for this, for Lisa Cook, for Adam Schiff?
Well, we send criminal referrals all the time. That's what's funny about this is people are saying, oh, well, this is selective. No, it's not. When we get mortgage fraud, we are going to prosecute it. And we are not prosecutors. So what we are going to do is we are going to refer that to the DOJ. Maria, I refer people almost every day to the Department of Justice for mortgage fraud. Why should Lisa Cook be exempt from that? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And whether it's Adam Schiff or Letitia James or, frankly, any other Republican, if you commit mortgage fraud, there should be consequences. This risks the rule of law. This risks the integrity of the institution that we have. This risks the safety and soundness of the mortgage bond market. We can't have that. We either have to have a safe and sound bond market that everybody agrees to certain rules, or we have to have this mayhem where a Federal Reserve governor can say that she's outside of the law. No one is above the law.
Well, and what Ed Martin said from the DOJ over the weekend when I spoke with him is that when you get a criminal referral, it opens the door to actually investigate what is going on here. And he said when you're lying about one thing, you're often lying about something else. When you're committing a crime here, you might be committing a crime there. So it opens up a bit of a Pandora's box.
Well, Maria, I'll tell you something that we haven't really discussed publicly, and that is we're also probing her Massachusetts property. These are things where you get a tip in, and then all of a sudden you learn that they have another loan here, another loan there. And it's concerning because, as you know, I oversee not just Fannie and Freddie, but I also oversee the Federal Reserve home loan banks. And one of the banks that's involved in this investigation, unfortunately, is a member bank of the Federal Home Loan Banks. I am the regulator. President Trump, under President Trump's leadership, I am the regulator. So I have a duty to do this. When I got Senate confirmed, I swore in my testimony that I would oversee mortgage fraud. So we're going to go wherever the facts are. We're going to turn that over to the DOJ. And if they decide to impanel a grand jury on this, which I believe that they will, I believe that the DOJ will open up an investigation in this. I think it's just a stain on the Fed. And I think it's very disrespectful both to the country, to the president, and frankly, even to the Federal Reserve for this lady to stay in office.
Well, look, grand juries, what is this going to take, 18 months or something? I mean, when you get a criminal referral, this could go on now for a year. No?
No. I mean, you can move very quick. I mean, look, this is a black and white situation from my perspective. It's either did she sign these documents or not. You know, what's funny is they tried to go after President Trump on, complete nonsense. He was totally innocent. In this case, you see these signatures. Did you sign this document or did you not? And, she can say whatever she wants, but at the end of the day, the facts speak for themselves. And I'll tell you, this is the hottest story in the world right now, Maria, for the very reason that people get it. You can't go and fraudulently represent things that aren't true in order to procure a loan. And the elites and the wealthy class, this is why President Trump won in a landslide, because the people are sick and tired of this crap.
Yeah. But putting mortgage fraud aside, I mean, President Trump has issues with just the ineptitude of the Fed. The president has accused Chairman Jay Powell of hurting the housing industry. He said this on Truth Social. Could somebody please inform Jerome Too Late Powell that he is hurting the housing industry very badly? People can't get a mortgage because of him. There is no inflation, and every sign is pointing to a major rate cut. Bill, if we were to see a rate cut next month, the president will obviously be able to say, look, I told you so. But are we talking about a bloated situation regardless of whether we're getting cuts at all? They put all that money into the new headquarters. I was told, I'm about to interview Christine Lagarde at the European Central Bank, and I'd like to know how different the ECB is to the Fed. I mean, the Fed has how many branches? How many offices? How much money spent?
Well, it's crazy. But first, I want to just distinguish, Maria. First, I just want to distinguish, Maria, if this is okay. I want to put the regulator hat and the other hat aside for a second with regard to Lisa Cook, because obviously those are alleged crimes. So let's shift into the political side of things. I think those are very important to keep different. As it relates to the political side of things and as it relates to policy, which is what you're talking about in terms of interest rates, he has gotten this so wrong that I'm very concerned with the damage that it's doing to the housing market. And I think it will do damage to the housing market for up to 2 years after he's gone. So time is of the essence with regard to cutting these rates. We've already seen home builders laying off people. We've seen home builders restrict supply. This may be in the best interest of home builders, but it's not in the best interest of Americans. The interest rates need to be at 1%. And frankly, I hope that whoever becomes Fed chair takes them down to 1%, if not lower. We have a president who's extremely competent. The president is unlike Biden. Biden didn't even know what inflation was. This president came in and crushed inflation. So you have a president that will continue to crush inflation. He will continue to keep inflation low. Rates need to be at 0 or 1% at the highest.
Yeah, well, you don't see a lot of that in the mainstream media, that's for sure. They completely missed the point when Joe Biden sent inflation to 40-year highs, 9.1%. We're all the way back down to 2% under President Trump. Bill, we're going to be watching your work. Obviously, a huge story. We appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
A shocking arrest at the southern border. An American citizen is under arrest, charged with 4 counts of human smuggling. Texas Department of Public Safety exclusively sharing this video with Mornings with Maria. Troopers in Valverde County pull over a 29-year-old woman identified as Shakira Dominique Jordan from Mississippi. She was pulled over for speeding, then detained. In the car, 4 illegal aliens were discovered. Cops say they're from Cuba and El Salvador, but one classified as a special interest alien from Afghanistan. Investigators say Jordan was driving the 4 illegal aliens across the border from Mexico. She's now facing 4 felony counts of human smuggling. The same day, DPS captured 2 special interest aliens from Pakistan after they tried to evade law enforcement on a private ranch. I want to bring in Texas Department of Public Safety Lieutenant Christopher Oliveras. Lieutenant, tell us more about this arrest.
Well, good morning, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on. Of course, we've always talked about, especially the last 4 years, about public safety and national security risks, especially gotaways. And I think this investigation, this human smuggling investigation by one of our troopers, really underscores the importance of our troopers being out there stopping and interdicting these criminal smugglers. This woman, a U.S. citizen, as you mentioned, from Mississippi, came down to the border for the sole purpose to smuggle illegal immigrants. And one of those illegal immigrants was a special interest alien from Afghanistan. And that in itself poses to be a public safety and national security risk, especially we don't know who these individuals are that are being smuggled into the interior. So a great job by our troopers, and really highlights the fact that Texas, we're still at the forefront of this border operation that we've been doing since 2021 when Governor Abbott first launched Operation Lone Star. It really prioritizes the enhancement of public safety and border security from our state troopers working in Texas. So again, great job by our trooper. And you got to also think too, and also for the viewers, that if our trooper wasn't out there, these are 4 potential gotaways that would have made it into the interior, and really not knowing exactly this special interest alien from Afghanistan, what his background is, what his intentions were, where was he going to end up. So I think that in itself really shows that we still have active activity on the border, especially when we talk about and include gotaways and special interest aliens. So again, great work by our trooper, and the fact that we're still out there, we're still carrying on our mission in Texas and committed to border security.
But obviously the question here, though, is, in my mind, who is paying her? Do we have any? Was it a cartel? Is that the working theory? Can you give us any more idea?
Typically that's how it works, Cheryl. This particular woman, she told one of our troopers that she was getting paid $500 per person that she smuggled, which, obviously that's pretty low, especially for someone that's being smuggled from Afghanistan. But that's what she told our troopers. But again, typically when we see, smugglers from out of state, it's organized. I mean, they are talking to a criminal smuggling organization. They facilitate a rental car. This was a rental car in this particular video that this woman was driving. And they come down to the border. They know where to go. They use encrypted messaging, GPS coordinates to pick up people and then smuggle them from point A to point B. And that's where they receive payments. So it's still very organized. We're not seeing it to the level that we saw the last 4 years, but nonetheless, the cartels are very discreet. They're very careful now in how they continue to carry out their smuggling operations. That's why it is vital to have our state troopers on these major highways interdicting these smugglers to prevent these gotaways and these potential public safety and national security risks from making it into the interior.
Well, and the cartels are still dangerous operations and dangerous people,
Yep.
and this is about fentanyl trafficking and about money. And under the Biden administration, we're talking about $1 billion industry. The cartels weren't just going to walk away and put their guns down because President Trump was elected. It's not how this works, and we know that, unfortunately. I want to ask you about this. The Pentagon ordered an unusually large naval buildup in Latin America. There's at least 7 vessels down there, 3 guided missile destroyers off the waters of Venezuela. The White House is accusing President Maduro of heading up a drug cartel. Maduro's calling up millions of militia members. He's deploying like 15,000 troops to the Colombia border to defend his country. What does this mean to all of you? Because I know one of the things that we've seen at the southern border over the last 4 years has been an inordinate amount of Venezuelans.
Well, exactly right. And this is if you kind of look back the last 4 years, I mean, Venezuela allowed hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans into our country that crossed through Texas, to include now the designated foreign terrorist organization known as TDA. And we've seen what these terrorist organizations have caused in our country, how it's impacted U.S. citizens' lives. Some have committed heinous crimes to include murder. But the fact is that now we're seeing more of an aggressive posture by the United States. And again, the cartels are going to exploit, vulnerabilities, especially in countries like Venezuela when there's instability. They're going to use those countries to smuggle large shipments of drugs, whether it be cocaine, methamphetamine, or fentanyl. So by having these U.S. naval ships, it's going to interdict those drugs before they actually make it to Central America or Mexico, and then ultimately into our country. So again, this really shows how the administration, how the United States is really taking a more proactive posture and trying to interdict these large shipments of drugs by the cartels. Again, the cartels are going to adapt, as you mentioned earlier. They're going to adapt to the changes. We may not see the level that we saw the last 4 years because they have been impacted, as you mentioned, also by human smuggling. That was a multi-billion-dollar criminal network for the cartels. That has decreased significantly. So now what they're going to do is increase their shipments of cocaine, methamphetamine, other illicit drugs by using the sea or the coastal water, especially in the Caribbean, to get their drugs across the United States. So again, really shows the proactiveness from this administration, how they are working to try to stop these large shipments of drugs, but also how we also on the ground in Texas, we are the last line of defense when it comes to these type of operations, because we want to stop that flow of drugs making their way into our state as well, and also to the entire country.
And that's why they put so much focus on the tunnels in Arizona. And I've seen some reporting now that the cartels in Mexico are moving towards other countries, trying to extend their reach into Colombia. into other Central American countries to broaden out their enterprise because they've taken a financial hit from the United States. I do want to ask you about President Trump. He's really gaining some political leverage in the fight against Latin American drug cartels that we're talking about. There was this guilty plea of Sinaloa cartel co-founder El Mayo. El Mayo admitted to decades of coordination with Mexican officials to smuggle drugs to the U.S. Now, likely going to be behind bars the rest of his life, Lieutenant. But your reaction, I think the fact that it's the cartel members and the government officials working together, it's like something that you think you believe, but he said that was happening.
Well, I mean, of course, El Mayo is probably one of the most influential cartel leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, actually in cartel history. And the fact that now that he has, pled guilty, it is a really significant impact to the organization. But nonetheless, cartels operate like corporations. You have one leader falls, someone else is going to step in and fill that gap. And that's what's been happening, especially if you look back when El Chapo got arrested, one of the leaders from the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel continued to move on. And of course, we saw the flow of fentanyl at the highest level in the last 4 years. So the cartels will adapt to those changes. I mean, like I said, they're like corporations, and they are truly a global threat. And that's why, we need to focus on really trying to stop the flow of drugs and really going after not only the leaders, but really stopping that supply chain of drugs and really going after their finances. Yeah. Trying to disrupt their finances. That's really going to impact the cartels. Well, but again, this is a time to really go after them, especially where they're at the weakest point, to really go after these organizations.
Sorry I interrupted you, but it seems that that's why the Trump administration is going so hard after Mexico's president. Exactly. The tariff fight because of this. It's all connected, unfortunately. Lieutenant Christopher Olivares, thank you so much for being with us on this Friday. Really appreciate it.
Anyway, that's the riff. I've gone on too far. We have two brilliant panelists, and I'm delighted and honored that they're here today. Of course, Harris Faulkner, host of the Faulkner Focus and co-host of Outnumbered on Fox News. There's nobody better than Harris Faulkner. And on top of that, we have the great Victor Davis Hanson, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow, and the most brilliant columnist I know, or certainly one of them. So I say thanks to both of you. Harris, let me begin with you. You know what? I'm not going to try to rework the wheel. There's been so much done in the last 24 hours on both our networks. But I want to divide this up, if I may, simply. There's an economic side to this story which hasn't really been covered. Charlie's warnings, okay? And I want to cover that. And then there's an incredible spiritual value side. He was a dedicated Christian. In fact, can we run the tape of Charlie talking about his religious values and the marriage and even the afterlife? Do we have that tape to run right here off the top? Here it comes. Please take a listen.
I would argue you have a lot more faith than I do. You have a lot more blind faith to believe that everything around you, love, joy, peace, sadness, is all just a construct of neurons firing in your brain. We as Christians have hope that we are going to see our loved ones again, and that we will be in heaven, and that we will be in perfect peace, and that this is not it. In fact, there's something even better awaiting us.
That's something. We will be in heaven. There is something better awaiting us, Harris Faulkner. I sort of choke up listening to that. I happen to agree with him. I happen to personally agree with him. You and I have talked about this before. Tell me what you're thinking.
Charlie knew the basis of his Christian faith was about not praying for perfection here on the planet, but knowing peace when we pray. That's what the Lord really puts in our spirit. Like, things are going to happen. Horrible things can happen. The prayer of others and for ourselves brings us the peace that only we can get through God. And that's what I pray for Erica and his extended family, his two beautiful children with Erica. All of that. Charlie understood it. And what Charlie didn't want anybody to do was to ignore the facts. It's one of the things that made us friends. And we didn't know each other tremendously well, but we met at the embassy opening in Jerusalem years ago. I was covering it. He was there too. And I mean, I know it was only 2018, 7 years ago, but he seemed like a kid to me. And I thought, what is this? What in the world is this young kid doing? And my eyes got opened wider and wider every time I saw him. And then I found myself living in the Phoenix area part of the time on this great life and journey and divine assignment the Lord has put me on. And he was like down the road in Phoenix, and he would text me or DM me and say, Harris, you're not going to believe the crowd I'm going to see. And I mean, that guy could get a crowd. But when it came to the economy, I started to pay attention because those crowds were talking about a lack of affordability. And he was listening to them because he was living it. He was newly married. They were about to have a baby. I mean, his life was changing and getting what? Kids are so expensive, especially when they're little like that. And you're spending and you're understanding. He understood the moment he read the room because he was part of it. And you can say, well, anybody can talk to anybody. Well, that's true, but it is a superpower, divine superpower, and a mission if you can be among those who are your generation and lead them. And if you can get them to vote, that's next to a miracle. He was doing that work. And so the don't give up, I mean, that's him. And that has to be us now. Of every generation, we have to understand, you can't just seed those young people who teach us a lot about the affordability of the economy.
Of course, they're leading indicators.
And they're going to vote,
That's an
in
important
part
barometer.
because of that young man.
They're the closest to it. They have the least, the smallest cushions.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just
Yeah.
starting out in life. Victor Davis Hanson, bringing in on this with the great Harris Faulkner. It's
You're
hard
so
to
sweet.
find. First of all, I would just say, from my point of view, it's hard to find a youngster, as he was, a young leader, a great leader, who has so much faith and willingness to talk about his faith, which is the subject I love, and also to talk about the economy, which is another subject that I love. It's twofold. I'm not trying to rework all the wheels and all the copy that we've had in the last 24 hours, but I think that's a remarkable combination. Now, Victor, here's the thing. On the economy, I mean, you can say what you want, but on the economy, he was issuing a warning. The affordability crisis has not been solved. And the Mondami effect, I mean, we're seeing it in New York. We're probably going to see it in other cities. Lord knows how this is going to work out. Prices have not suddenly, leveled off and are falling. We still have issues here, Victor Davis Hanson. How do you see the affordability? How do you see Charlie Kirk's warning about the so-called Mondami effect?
Well, he was absolutely right. He was not trying to start from the top of politics and said you've got to vote for Republicans or conservatives. He was trying to give a reason why people should, and that was economic, cultural, social. He talked a lot about delayed marriage, delayed adolescence, prolonged adolescence, too few children, the declining fertility rate. And then he went down to the next level and said that's because energy prices are too high, your electric bill is too high, insurance is too high. And he talked about globalization. He said there were people on the coast that made out like bandits. They had international skills. They had an international audience. But the people in the interior that relied on muscular labor, not so much. They were victims of outsourcing and offshoring, and the Republican Party had to address those cultural, social, and civil needs. And I think he was brilliant about that. And what was unusual is he had the same versatility in his methodology. He could speak to anybody. He was a columnist, he was a podcaster, he created this organization. So there's nobody under 40 of either party that brought so much talent and skills. And then to top it off, he was an autodidact. He just avoided higher education and its pathologies, and yet he could wade into Oxford or Cambridge audiences and hold his own, if not beat these people from the most sophisticated educational places in the world. He's irreplaceable. That's very sad, but it's true.
It's so powerful that you use that word. So today I had the honor of, on this day, and I say honor because we talked about faith, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and myself, and he talked about the irreplaceability of this young leader. And I think we have a little bit of that if you have time.
Okay, do we have it? Can we play Harris's Netanyahu catch? We don't have the tape. Okay. We didn't get the tape. So
all right.
But we've got, hang on, before we do that, we have one more for this segment on Charlie Kirk. Go ahead. Let's just run this tape. Hang on a second. I'm going to hold the Netanyahu thought. He's a friend of mine, Netanyahu.
Okay.
Here it comes. Hopefully.
Yes.
President Trump is going to fix this, and he is aiming to fix this. But understand, for the younger voters that I represent and the younger voters that delivered the White House for President Trump, they can't afford homes. They're increasingly renting. They're not getting married. They're not having children. So there's two ways this can go.
All right. That's very interesting. So that's back to the economic side. Please finish your Netanyahu thought, and then I'm going to have Victor Davis Hanson be our economist again.
What he was saying is that when he and Charlie met on a couple of occasions, they met first at that same embassy opening when President Trump moved our U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, honoring a longtime promise that others had made, but Trump made it happen. On that day, they met for the first time. Then a year later, Charlie Kirk went back, and they talked about faith. And what Netanyahu said was the friendship that they had was based on the premise that Charlie understood the marriage of our faiths through history, Judaism and Christianity.
Right.
And he said that they were on solid foundation, and that there were so many young people, even in Israel, that understood that part of who he was and how special that was. And he said he was a young man that he was looking forward to, that he was going to come back this fall. He said, and I will never see him make that third Israel trip, but he's irreplaceable in my eyes, and I will never forget him. And he compared him to his brother, who he lost at 30. Charlie's 31.
Yes, right.
And he said, just like he thinks of his brother every day, he will think of Charlie. Yeah, it was powerful.
Yes, Netanyahu often talks about his brother. It was a long time ago, but that's right. That's exactly right. Victor Davis Hanson, the movement will live on, I'm going to presume. It's so large and vast. But I just wanted to come back to this issue. The affordability issue, the Mandami effect issue, the fact is, I don't think people are, at this moment in time, completely convinced that the current administration and Republicans, an administration that I support very strongly, and policies that I support, but I don't think people are convinced right here in September of the first year. And I think young people, they're the most sensitive, right? They're the least, they have the least cushion in economic life, right? And I think they're worried. I think that's why this socialist in New York has done as well as he's done. I fear that this is something that may crop up. I have confidence that Donald Trump can do something about it. But in a way, Charlie Kirk's last interviews here were kind of a plea for help to make sure that people listened to what he's saying and fix it. I mean, Victor Davis Hanson, he's saying to people, you know, I hope we're listening, but he's basically talking about how, you know, they can move to the dark side just as rapidly as they move to the positive, optimistic Trumpian side.
Yeah, I talked to him in late August. I was on his show, and we had a long talk afterwards. And you're absolutely right. He identified the problem, and he knew that Mamdani and the hard left had no solutions. But the Republicans had to step in. And I think what he was most interested in is there was a red state model, and we were talking about that, where 4 to 6 million people have left. It's deregulation, encouraged development, less zoning laws, incentives for private builders, a whole different culture in Florida or Texas than California or Massachusetts or New York. And he said that problem is not as acute, but his worry was, how do you do that? How do you bring the red state model into politically blue states and teach people that that paradigm's not working for them, because they're going to take the Mamdani solution, or they'll vet with Mamdani when there is a model that works in most red states, and we have to find a way politically to convince people in blue and purple states that they don't have to regulate, they don't have to overzone, they don't have to have all these fuel mandates, et cetera. They can build nuclear plants, they can still use clean coal. He had a very optimism, and I think that's what he was interested in. He said, you know, we won these transitional states in the election, and if we can just get this model and show them how it works in blue states, we can have a long tenure. I think that was very astute of him.
You know, just as a last thought here, the brilliance of a brilliant analyst, and Charlie Kirk was nothing if not a brilliant analyst, is to know even your side may have problems getting the story right. And in fact, may be getting it wrong.
Yeah.
The brilliance is to even warn your own folks And I think that that's what Charlie Kirk was trying to do here in the last weeks.
And I think he was effective. I mean, he has a very close relationship, not just reported, but Laura Trump was on with us on a number today, and they were close, Donald Trump Jr. and Charlie Kirk. And so I think that messaging was breaking through. But I say that President Trump was hearing that message. I mean, the family is close. They were close with Charlie Kirk. I mean, they are flying him back for his family on Air Force Two. Home to Arizona. And you know, the reason that we can tell, the president is trying to find a place to get in there, like Victor was just talking about. You might be able to reach people on the affordability and those other economic issues if you can knock out crime, if you can knock out the resources being sucked up by illegals who are committing violent crimes in this country. So I think the message was getting through. I think it was carried out to a certain degree, to a point where Charlie was starting to see that. We certainly see it in Arizona. I mean, it's a red state, much like Florida, where people have fled to from California. And they know, they're like, oh, wow, look at all these police officers on the streets. It's safer here.
I'll tell you what, I'd like to talk to you both for another 40 minutes. One part of that message that Mr. Trump got, for sure, was the faith message.
Amen.
That is just so important, in my opinion. I can't. They're yelling at me at the top of their lungs.
The timing of his religious liberty event this week and now.
Yes.
Amen to that.
The Bible speech was just phenomenal.
Excellent.
And anyway, may God bless Charlie. May God bless Charlie Kirk. Thank you ever so much, Victor, Davis, Hanson, Harris, Faulkner. You're both terrific on a difficult day, but I appreciate your help very much. You take care. Well, if you take a look at the Wall Street Journal article, it's on the front page of the website. Mass firings if the government shuts down. All right, fine. Let's talk about it with Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, dear friend. So, Newt, White House to pursue mass firings. This is Russell Vought, OMB director. This undoubtedly comes from President Trump. If the Democrats want to screw around, they want to repeal one big, beautiful bill, they want to start spending again, well, heck. And anyway, you think there's no chance for mass firings even if the government doesn't shut down? Where do you come out on this stuff?
Well, look, I think that the Democrats are in a hopeless situation. And I've been looking at people like Congresswoman Spanberger, who's running for governor of Virginia. How can she vote against keeping the government open when it is her constituents in Northern Virginia who are going to bear the brunt of any government shutdown? Now, the fact is that Schumer and to some extent Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat leaders in the House and Senate, have walked themselves into a total trap. The House Republicans under Mike Johnson's leadership have already passed a clean continuing resolution that gets them into November, gives them time to keep passing appropriations bills, had nothing in it that was a problem. For the Democrats in the Senate now to stop that bill and close the government, I think is almost suicidal. Because under the rules, the president will be able, in this kind of situation, to decide with the limited money he will have what to spend and what not to spend. And if they start picking out various left-wing bureaucracies that, frankly, they don't care about anyway, and they begin dismantling them, you're going to see people lose their jobs who are not going to be called back. And I think that the Democrats are really playing with nitroglycerin or dynamite right now because all the strength is on the president's side. We just did a survey at America's New Majority Project, and it's clear the American people do not want to increase spending. They would like to keep the government open, but not at the cost of massive increases in spending. And when they learn that the Democrats are demanding increases in spending while the Republicans are passing a clean continuing resolution, over 40% of the country blames the Democrats for being unreasonable. So I think this was an amazing moment.
Here's the Trump effect. We just got today. The GDP for Mr. Trump's first quarter, up almost 4% at an annual rate, okay? The big government socialists that you taught me that name, the Biden crowd not got anything close to that. 4%. The stock market since early April is up about 35%. And the Democrats want to shut down the government. Oh, the Democrats want to break one big, beautiful bill. You know, Newt, people are using already their retroactive tax cuts to buy business equipment and machinery and start building factories, which means the hiring is going to start very soon. Do you know business was stronger than consumers in this GDP report because they're spending the tax cuts already that was, and the Democrats want to repeal this? Really? Heck, let them go ahead and repeal it. They'll vote themselves out of office for the next 25 years.
Look, you know as well as I do that repealing it or failing to pass it would have been the largest tax increase in American history.
Yes.
And at America's New Majority Project, we discovered 84% of the country, 84% was opposed to the largest tax increase in history. And yet every Democrat in the House and Senate voted functionally for the largest tax increase in history. They're off the deep end. This is why Gallup just reported that they're now down to 34% approval or favorable, which is the lowest favorable number for the Democratic Party in the history of Gallup's polls. I mean, these folks are just, it's almost like they're in the middle of quicksand and seeing how fast they can sink.
4% growth, Newt. 35% stock market.
Well,
really, the Trump effect. The Trump effect is what I'm calling it.
remember, Larry, I said to you, next year the campaign's going to be a Trump boom versus Democrats gloom. And that's what the choice is going to be in 26.
You know what? There's a poll out. I got to go. There's a poll out. This guy, Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. I don't know if anybody. He's running even with the left-wing Democrat. This is wonderful things are happening anyway outside in New York City.
Yep.
Newt Gingrich, you're wonderful. Thanks for helping us. We appreciate it ever so much.
Glad to do it.